welcome to the latest episode of Property Lifestyle Mastery. And on today's episode, we are talking about the downsides of being overly goal-oriented, which is good, going into February 2024. We've spoken a lot about strategy and habits for 2024, and that gets us really in a goal-oriented mindset. But from my personal perspective, I've been too overly goal-oriented for many years, and it's created a lot of downsides alongside the success. So here's some of the lessons that I've had along the way and how I've started to make life a lot more fun while still achieving a lot of stuff. So here's myself and Dom. Let's do this. Hey Dom.
Hey Jackie.
So the topic for today is, when is pushing too hard bad for business?
Oh.
So it's a big one.
It is. And you know what? I was thinking we could go straight to the answer, but that would be boring and it would make it for a very short episode. And actually, it's similar to asking, say, Richard Branson the question, how did you build your multi-billion pound empire? And him going, I just did it. It misses out the context, and it misses out the stories that are so important to help people understand when pushing too hard is hurting your business. So yeah, so what springs to mind for you first?
For me, this is how the first part, the pushing too hard. For me, the pushing is the striving, and it is the having a goal that you're aiming towards and it being all about that goal. So that is basically the whole way that I lived my life from probably like the age of like 7-ish up until a few years ago, maybe even 2 years ago, really recently. It was always very goal oriented and pushing towards making that happen, and to the detriment, not to the detriment, but broadly to the detriment of the enjoying the journey and the moment to getting there. So yeah, it's all about the goal, not about the journey. That's what that pushing too hard and that striving means to me. What does it mean to you?
Yes. And the way I understand that is that it's you're aiming, the goal, which is the what. So you're thinking about what it is I want to achieve, rather than possibly starting with, well, why do I want to achieve it? Because basically the reason why we want to achieve it is to create a feeling. That's how we experience the world. To create a feeling of happiness, abundance, love, connection, whatever it might be, and a combination of those. So actually, to start, we need to start with why we're doing it.
So true. And it's making me really think that, like, I'm probably thinking this might be relevant for quite a lot of people who resonate with us so far. I was a very sensitive child. I had a lot of feelings and the world was quite overwhelming to me. So like, I was told a lot as a kid, you're a very sensitive person, which was not a good thing. It was a negative thing. Nice. So therefore, I guess that as I grew up, it was like, well, feelings aren't a helpful thing. Right. Because I am therefore being too sensitive, so therefore I have to find a way that avoids feeling. So therefore I'm gonna, of course, miss out the why, because I've said that those things are not valid.
Yes, right. Yeah, so exactly. You've literally suppressed, repressed, and avoided the feelings. You've just gone straight into, I've got to do this. Society expects me to do this. This is the way the world works. This is the way everyone else works. I must build my business to this size and aim for these really big goals, because that's what everyone else does, and it's what is expected of me culturally and from my family and everyone else. So that's why an awful lot of people are doing it, but that's the wrong reason to be doing it.
It is the wrong reason, and I think that's why you have been, well, one of the reasons that you've been a very important person in my life. Like, as we talked about wealth dynamics in a recent episode and the different profiles and how they're predisposed to different questions. I think you spoke about this on the episode. Right. So my natural question is what?
Yes.
Dave's natural question is how. So between the two of us, we're an absolute powerhouse of going out and making stuff happen, but completely forgetting why the bloody hell you're actually doing it, which is why enter Dom. That's why you have shifted, well, in a way shifted everything, but also shifted nothing, because it's all the same stuff, but except it can feel so different when the why shift.
Yeah, it's a different perspective on the same thing. Ultimately we're all human beings having experience, and it's just a different perspective, a different angle on what it is that we're looking at. And I look at it from a place of who's done this, who's got the answer to this already, what do I need to learn from them in order to understand the answer for this particular problem. And then of course the last question is when as well. So if you've got the start with why, then think about what it is so that you've got a direction to head in. Consider who needs to be with you, because it's the other thing is like, when is pushing too hard in your business hurting you? It's like, well, when you're trying to do everything, that there's probably a sign that you need to get some other team members on board to help you along, to make it a little bit easier, so that you're back to your regulated homeostasis self when you're at your peak and you're feeling good. So having the right people around you to achieve that is absolutely key. And then having that consistency, that when am I doing these things, so that I don't feel overwhelmed the whole time, and I've actually got a rhythm to the business. So that framework of why, what, who, when, and how is very useful for answering any question, any problem, any project you need to get done. Answer those questions and it will give you a lot more clarity.
I think it's really interesting though, the why question, because I feel like if you start with why, it's like something you might have heard a lot, and I think people then go, my why is my family, my why is my legacy, my why is because I want to travel the world. Really, we've got to go further than that, right? Why is it about your family and about legacy and about traveling the world?
Yes.
Because really, it's why those things, Dom? Why are they important to people?
Well, I think that's also conditioning. I think family, there's an expectation that you have responsibility and you must look after your family, and people will be like, well, yeah, duh. But at the same time, we're humans on a planet, and we're here to experience anything and everything. We're here to experience almost whatever we want. And actually, what's right for you is actually right for everyone else, even if it is painful, because we're here to grow. We're here to, life is not a comfort-centered experience. It's a growth-centered experience. We are here to grow, and challenges are always going to come up. We can choose the timings in a way of certain challenges, and maybe sometimes not, because if, I don't know, someone gets divorced or something, the other party might not know anything about it. They're thrown a challenge. Other people do it, deliberately. Same with business. We can choose to grow really fast and put in loads of effort, or we can choose to go sort of more of a slower pace potentially. But either of them are going to throw up challenges which are there to awaken us to our true essence of who we are.
I guess my wondering is, like, with we've got these reasons why we're telling ourselves we're doing it, because we want to look after our family and leave a legacy, for example. So what we're kind of saying is we're doing things because we want to feel a certain way.
Yes.
I want to feel in control and I want to feel happy. Probably you go down the line, it all ends up to happiness.
Right.
How does then challenge then fit in with that? If our why is really that we actually want to be happy, where does the challenge fit into that?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. Where does challenge fit into it? I think it's part of growing. You can't grow without challenge. It's like you can't get stronger without straining the muscles. We have to effectively have challenge to grow, but we don't have to suffer through that challenge. We can know that it is a process, and we are going to get to the other side. And the more we train our minds and our feelings to go, you know what, everything's okay. I'm enough. I'm enough just the way I am. But I'm going to enjoy this experience of learning something new and growing a business and serving others, because actually that's fulfilling. And also there's something that I can't quite explain that's inside of me that's pulling me in that direction.
It's kind of like layers, isn't it? That's what I think is the challenging thing to understand. Like, at various points you have to aim for just the next stage in the process, because really, if you are unhappy aiming towards happiness, that is probably a worthy point, but actually then you get to a certain point, actually no, it's not about happiness, it's about growth and experiencing things fully, which is actually probably more of a achievable life experience, because we can't always be happy. Like is going to be challenges that are going to test us and how we respond to it. And you brought the David Hawkins, the scale of consciousness, into our world. Do you want to maybe explain what that's about?
A little bit. Basically, there are feelings, things like anger and frustration and apathy and guilt and shame, and these are all things that hold you in inaction. They stop you moving forward. They stop you being able to take action, because fear, in particular, is just something that it causes us to freeze sometimes. And these are all lower frequency feelings. Then you get to things like pride and desire. And these are ones that they're not necessarily good, because if you don't get them, then you'll drop back down into a more negative state. But life changes when you get above the line, and the line starts at the level of courage. When you choose to be courageous and are open and willing to see what's going to happen, and you accept whatever does happen, that's when you can be more sort of neutral about it and at peace. And actually, the more you find that, actually, then you have love and joy. So those are all things that are above the line, and these are positive, life affirming feelings that we can choose to have and deliberately aim for on a regular basis in our lives. That helps as a way of measuring effectively where we feel we're at any point during the day or during the week, during the year, to go, how am I feeling about this? Is it bringing?
That's really great. So basically the top ones are like basically peace, joy, love are the very top of it.
That's right. Yeah.
And I remember when you first sent us this sort of the scale of consciousness, Dave and I looked at it. We definitely at that point we'd built a business. I can't remember quite what they all are, but beyond courage.
Yes. Then it's neutrality, willingness, acceptance, and then reason.
Yes. So okay. Probably we're like around that kind of level, and looking at this, going, can you really build a business from the higher ones? Like I feel like if you want to build a business, you kind of got to stay at a certain point, because beyond that, you're just like, just everything is just peaceful and loving, and like, how can you do anything from that point? And like, that's been an interesting journey for us in terms of building the business. I think it brings it back nicely to the question that we started with, is like, when is pushing too hard bad for your business? And from my own personal experience of this, it has been getting to courage and then starting to take action and pushing towards things from that level of being like that. For me, really, the business only came into existence because of those things. Probably if I'd just been a higher frequency person already, the business probably wouldn't have been built, because it required that grit and these other emotions to make it happen, which was great. And I could have had a more enjoyable experience of building the business at various points, but actually it did serve a purpose. And it's kind of like that quote of like, what got you to a certain point, what got you here won't get you there. So therefore, that's you find everything when you're meant to find it. But when you brought that scale of consciousness in, and then it starts to make you question about how you could do something from a higher level of emotions, it's has been really important, because actually we got the business to a certain point, and I got myself to a certain point using those emotions, but actually it's had to become a bit of a transformation to get the business to the next level, and partly by shifting those emotions.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. We have to, it is a journey, as you've just described. It's a journey, and certain things will get to a certain level, but as you say, and Einstein famously quoted, the way you're thinking is not, or rather the solution to your problem at the moment is not going to be at the same level of thinking that got you here. It's going to be a different level of thinking, and that's why it's kind of like a ladder. And that's why when people start with us, they start at effectively a different level to the ones that we've been working with and stayed with us for 4 years now, because we've kind of shown them the ladder that they need to go up. And we have mentors who are further up that ladder and that we're learning from all the time. And so it's really important to be aware that yeah, people, great avatars and other things. They were teaching from a very high level, and that's why an awful lot of things other people don't understand, they don't get, because they're not ready to hear it, because they haven't got to that point yet. So what's right for your business and when is pushing too hard for your business kind of depends on where that person is at. Is actually kind of the thinking that I've come to in this discussion, because I did have a fast answer, and I can tell you the fast answer is basically when it's hurting you. If you're worrying, if you're anxious, if you're stressed out the whole time, then you're probably pushing too hard. Because
and if you're getting ill and you're always exhausted and like you're unhappy,
right,
yes, that is hurting you.
yeah, exactly. But when you say that to someone who's just starting out, they're like, no, I don't get it. Of course I've got to push hard, I've got to work hard, I've got to put in the extra hours, because otherwise I'm not going to get anywhere. And that will get them to a certain point. But beyond that, there's the other steps in the ladder that needs to be a step change, need to be a different perspective on things. So that's why it's so important to raise the awareness, which we always talk about, so that we understand where we're at, so that we know what the next step will be to help our business to grow in the right way. But generally speaking, pushing too hard is when you're hurting yourself. If you're worrying today, you're not helping yourself tomorrow. You're just missing out on the piece of today. And the more I see, and this is very different, right? Because culture says business is like this. We have to make sales and push hard and everything else. I'm seeing the more advanced businesses are, people understand that it's completely obvious that they should be working with this person because they've got the perfect solution for their issue. And of course, why wouldn't I work with them? Because they've got my solution, and it makes sense to me, and I can see the value in it. And they're not forcing them to make a fast decision now to buy something. They're allowing their customer to sit with the knowledge that they've provided and make a decision about purchasing in due course when they feel it's right. Because some people need to sit with something before they make a decision. Others will make fast decisions. Understanding your decision-making process is really important too, to knowing what you should do next as well.
I'm trying to decide when it first maybe shifted for me, the point that I should have stopped pushing in the way that I was and didn't. And it's really hard to identify when that changed, because you're right, when you're starting out, you've kind of got to push and hustle, and you're trying to get the momentum to happen. I guess probably it shifted for us when we had like a business model that was working. We were having we had investors, we had deals, and then you start to encounter the next level of challenges. I think that was probably when it was, maybe like 2017, 2018 was when it started to be the next level of challenges, but we were still trying to solve them from our previous level of being, which was to continue to just basically, I'm going to say bulldoze, not quite the right word, but like push
hard,
and like have an idea for how we wanted it to be and try to force that will upon the world. Now, I kind of feel like when we started, I had to, and maybe this is wrong, I don't know, but I felt like I had to enforce my will upon the world because the world felt like it didn't want me to do it. 7 mortgage brokers to get my first mortgage. Like, so many people laughed at me and said no. I had to keep pushing to go and make something happen, which ultimately served the purpose of it starting. But then once you get to a certain point, and the next level of challenges start to happen, maybe you've got builder issues or issues with down valuations or team issues. You can't continue to assert that level of will upon the world when there are that many more things going on. Like you can't do it. And I think maybe that's when I needed to change my level of being, but didn't. And Dave too, both of us the same. And so we kept pushing, and any time that stuff wasn't going our way was a self-judgment on us for not being good enough. And then that ultimately led to a lot more stress and illness, basically.
Right.
I don't know what you think about that. It's quite hard to reflect on it myself somehow.
It's good to reflect, and I would always encourage people to do that, because that's where you learn the best, is to go what has gone well, and maybe it's a good time of year to do it, beginning of the year, end of the year. is to look at what's gone well this year and where have you had the most success and why and how. I'm going to look to repeat that, but I don't know about you, but I found when things have happened naturally, kind of, or not quite effortlessly, but sort of naturally, and it feels good, it feels right, that's when I've had the most success, with actually almost the least effort. Whereas the times I've been pushing, and it's just not happening, that's when I go, actually, maybe that's guidance, maybe that's kind of the universe going, maybe you shouldn't be doing so much of this anymore, and actually do the stuff that you do enjoy more of. So
I think interesting though, because I kind of feel like sometimes the action is necessary. It's
yes.
more for me the volition behind the action that changes. Because I feel like, particularly culturally, we're like, we should be working hard and pushing and making things happen when then they aren't happening. We should push more.
Yeah.
But actually, you could do all of the same things, but just enjoy the process of it.
Yes.
Enjoy the process of it not working.
Right.
My God, imagine how different life in England could be, in the UK could be, if that was what was happening. It's like, oh, okay, that's like you're right, it's feedback. That's interesting that this isn't working. Okay, what else could I try? How can I make it more fun trying this? Or how could I learn more doing this? Or be more kind and loving to myself through all of this? Doesn't mean that you stop necessarily doing the things, but maybe because you're doing them with a different volition, you see the side doors. And I think that's the real problem that I think is clear for business owners to see, is that when you are pushing to make something happen, there's generally quite a negative emotion that's associated with that.
Right.
Guilt, fear, judgment, which when you're in those lower emotional frequencies, your whole your problem solving capabilities vastly reduced.
Right.
You become much more tunnel visioned. Yes. You can't see the side roads. Like, you're so focused on this road, like, I got a down valuation, so therefore I must challenge the down valuation to get a higher valuation to da 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 da. You're so focused on that you don't notice that actually, oh my gosh, okay, maybe I could actually sell a property and or do this with that property, and actually, gosh, that would just solve everything and it would be so much easier. But you can't see it when you're pushing at it. Yes. But if you were just going about it, but trying to enjoy the process. I got a down valuation. Okay, what can I learn from this? How can I move this forward with fun and joy? And oh my gosh, actually, there's all these other options that I couldn't see before, or I wouldn't have seen before. I feel like that for me is the main difference, which is so hard to get your head around when you just believe that when something doesn't go your way, it is bad, and so therefore you must feel guilty.
Yes. Yeah. It makes me think, the principle that of duality in life. We basically need to hold the idea that, yes, we do have to take action and commit and have a goal or an objective that we're aiming towards. But at the same time, we also need to kind of let go and, as you say, be aware of the side roads, the other ways that things could happen, and then recommit to the action that we do need to be taking. So it's always having that balance of the yin and the yang, or the masculine and the feminine. So maybe the masculine is taking the action, the feminine would be sort of letting go and going with it. But and all of us need to be aware of both and hold both, because that's when we're more balanced, and that's when we're actually going to have probably the most success. So it's no one thing. It's always both.
Yeah, it's true. And it's interesting because generally our Western society does hold the masculine in much higher esteem, right? And that's what this pushing, exerting your will on the world, that is the masculine energy. Exactly. And actually circling back to where we were, a little while ago in this conversation, my feminine energy as a child was sensitive, and therefore this should be suppressed. It's not helpful. You can't be crying at these things. Like, that is not helpful. We must make sure that you can be strong and push through these. And actually, that's so ultimately, it's damaging. And it's hot. And I think this conversation as well, like, you learning what your emotions are truly telling you is really a process, because we have all in this culture denied it. So it's about coming back to it and going, actually, for me, there's so much about me being a woman that I have denied, particularly in business. Like, if you even look how I would, even dress, like, a few years ago, it was power dressing. It was like, I've got to stand up to the masculine figures that are, that's the way of doing things in this industry. And actually, it's been a whole journey to come back to going, actually, no, I've got a lot of great power as a woman. I have a monthly cycle that I can work with rather than working against it and thinking that I should. The 9 to 5, day in, day out, is not built around the female. It's built around the male. I've got a whole month to work. And that even annoys me. Like, I'm trying to set up my monthly calendar to be more in line with my monthly hormonal cycle. If I want to set up on Microsoft, they have you can send a calendar booking link.
Yes.
It only recurs on a weekly basis or a month. You can't change it to be every 4 weeks, do it in this way. Like, everything is geared towards it. But actually, the more that I come towards the more feminine side, and actually having to overcorrect to get towards it, gosh, there's my emotions are really helpful. Crying as a woman is really helpful. And actually, the more that I don't do it, I remember one of our clients, we were running these weekly meditations, and it would make her quite emotional. She would cry in them, and she said, actually, I'm not going to come to these anymore because it's making me cry. Gosh, that's happening. That's just one example of one person, but it's happening all over the place. And so therefore, this denial of the emotions means that you can't really get to that emotional guidance system underneath, because we actually don't think it's valid. That was a bit of a rant, Dom. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no, but it's fascinating, and I love that you feel empowered in the amazing feminine energy that you possess and hold. And similarly, interestingly, I'm kind of a reflection of that. I'm discovering my masculinity far more recently, and because I do a fairly feminine role, I'm supporting people, I'm helping people. That would be arguably quite a feminine thing to do, but through discovering my manliness, I'm loving going to the gym at the moment, pumping iron and just feeling very, very masculine and feeling that, which is great, because I think, like you, a very sensitive child, and it was always sort of suppressed, and whereas now I can become more of who I am. And I think that ultimately that's it. That business is a vehicle for your self-actualization. So there's times to push and there's times to reflect and let go, and we need to see both sides. And having a coach, a mentor, a mastermind, someone who can help you see both sides, have the right knowledge, see both sides, be balanced with it, and that's when you know you're on the right path.
And knowing that, coming back to this pushing towards a goal thing, knowing that the feeling, if you aren't clear why you're really doing something, and really it is because we want to feel a certain way. If you aren't clear on that, and you think that the goal that you're heading towards is going to give you that feeling,
right?
It's not. Of course, it's great to achieve goals, and it's brilliant. But actually, it's a bit hollow if you don't really know why you're doing it. Because actually, say you want to build a property portfolio so that you've got the cash flow, so that you can travel the world, because you want to feel free.
Yeah.
You go out and build the property portfolio, you make it all happen. That's not freedom. Freedom is in the journey of getting there and actually enjoying it and just feeling great and exploring it and having challenges and learning from it and not feeling trapped in yourself as part of it. And that's been, gosh, I'm sure this conversation won't necessarily, a lot of it won't land necessarily, but hopefully at least just tuck this conversation at the back of your subconscious for when you maybe don't feel that things are panning out the way that you want them to. Because actually, I see it. We see it all the time. People come to us, they're like, "Oh, I've got this goal of getting this investor on, getting investors doing deals," and you see them on the journey to getting there, and we're like, "This is awesome! Congratulations for agreeing that deal or agreeing that investor." And they're like, "No, I can't be happy about it yet. It's not a done deal yet. Can't be happy. I'll celebrate when it's done." And the problem is, it's never done.
It's never done.
So then you never celebrate. So then you never feel good. So you're basically crap the whole time pushing towards these goals that you get to thinking you're going to feel good, and you don't feel good at the end, because in the journey is you got to feel good.
Yeah, absolutely. People don't know how to feel good now. This is the thing. I think society is always about delayed gratification, which has its merits too. But actually, it's enjoying the journey. So many people make decisions and do things based around from a position of fear. The reason is like, I must do this because I need cash flow, because if I don't have cash flow, then what? and basically always comes back to the fear of dying. But even that, if you look into it, is an illusion too. So I would say to people, always follow your heart. Always, well, not just your heart, because the heart isn't always wrong. Apparently, it's more in the spine, as I've been learning recently. But I would say, your heart is generally more accurate than your brain, because your brain will always justify the feeling. Whatever you're feeling, your brain will look to justify it. So if you start with what makes my heart sing, what are the things that I love to do, what is it that I really, really want to create in my world, in my life, for the right reasons rather than from fearful reasons, for growth reasons rather than fearful reasons, then you'll probably be going in the right direction. But if you do things out of fear, an awful lot of people get into property investing because they're fearful of not having enough money, or they're fearful of I don't know, working 9 to 5 for the rest of their life. Rather than, actually, I see this as a way to fulfill myself and help others live a lovely life in a lovely property that I'm going to help them refurbish and live in. So doing it for others and doing it for yourself, from a position of enjoyment in the moment and long term, then those are good reasons to push.
And I would say that if you'd have said to me 3 to 5 years ago, you're doing this because of fear, I'd have gone, Dom is full of crap. What we're talking about. So let's just go a few steps back. And I think the question, and I think this all kind of links together. You won't realize that you're doing it because of fear, because there's a lot of layers of rationalizations that are above the fear. So the first step to this is, when you're not feeling great about something, try not to let the brain get too involved in it, is the thing to say, because the brain will send you off down a rabbit hole,
right,
I'm trying to hide you from what it's really about. But if you then start to question, but underneath all of this, why am I feeling this way? Which is where you're ultimately getting to fear. It's like, oh, well, if this deal doesn't pull off, then I'll have lost some money. And if I'll have lost some money, then I'm not going to be able to put the food on the table for my family. If I can't put food on the table for my family, like, what's the point of my life? And actually, there's a load of, it's all that stuff underneath from where it's coming from. The brain basically tries to push you in one direction, but actually, if you look underneath about where it's truly coming from, then you get to the fear. So really, the first step is to try and, when you're not feeling good, just step back and be aware that you're not feeling good, and see if you can get underneath to closer to yourself, to where that's coming from, rather than going out and blaming the external world.
Yes, exactly. Because blame is always disempowering. Negative thoughts are disempowering. You're saying something else out there is more important, more powerful than me. And actually, you are the world. When you're fast asleep, does the world exist? I don't know. I'm fast asleep, right? So you think it at the moment, you think it's still there, but that's just the brain thinking. So life is a reflection of who we are.
So your final answer to the question is, when is pushing too hard bad for business? Is
anytime it's hurting you, anytime you're worried, anxious, overwhelmed, that's when it's, that's my answer.
And then I guess I would just tag on to that. I completely agree with what you've said. And because of those things, you are therefore narrowing your perception, your field of possibility, which means you are missing creative, better solutions for the business.
Yes.
Which therefore will take the business in a much better direction.
Right. 100%. Exactly. Yeah. Agree with that.
So go and have more fun, even through the challenges, because we don't have to feel bad. Like, for us, Dave and I, we've been very good at self-flagellation, like when stuff doesn't go to plan, so you like whip yourself basically because you think it should have gone better, and therefore you end up punishing yourself to try and somehow make yourself feel better. But actually, in the doing of that, you're actually making it overall worse. And actually, you making yourself feel bad doesn't help to solve the problem.
Yes.
You just being more, I think, neutral is probably a good place to aim for. It's just like looking at it and going, this isn't, I'm perceiving this as bad, but actually maybe there is something good. I don't know if we've on this podcast yet spoken about the parable where it's about the guy with the horse.
Yes.
You know about this one? So it's basically like the guy, there's I'm seeing if I can tell the story any well at all. So basically, a guy, he has a horse. The horse runs away, and his neighbors are like, "Oh my god, that's like awful. How bad you've lost this like prized possession horse of yours." And this man instead goes, "Nah, it could be bad, could be good." And then anyway, a few days later, the horse comes back and he's brought with it another horse. He's made a horsey friend. I don't know if this is the actual one. This is Jackie's version. He's got a horsey friend that's come back with him. And now he has two horses, which if the horse hadn't run away, this other horse would never have come. And all the neighbors are like, wow, you're so lucky. This is like, this could be great. And the man says, could be bad, could be good. And then the next day, the son is riding on this new horse. His son's riding on this new horse, and the horse throws him off and he breaks his leg. And the neighbors are like, oh my God, this is so bad. I feel awful for you. And the man is like, well, could be bad, could be good. And then the next day, all the boys in the village get inscripted to go away to war. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, it's so lucky that your son has broken his leg because he can't go to war. How good is that? And it just kind of goes on and on like this. And the man is always saying, basically, don't judge the situation. Like it could be bad or it could be good. We don't know. We've just got to stay neutral to the situation. So really, the next time that you perceive that something is bad that's happening in your property business, right, maybe there's a good reason for it.
There we go. Maybe it's actually somehow doing you a favor. Yeah. And that's why it's good to not be attached to any particular outcome, because it's the attachment and the judgment of a situation that causes us to feel bad, basically. So if we take away judgment, take away attachment, and just go, you know what, I'm present here in this moment, enjoying the journey of this life, then everything gets a lot easier.
Wow, I really enjoyed recording that episode with Dom. So thank you so much for joining us for that one. If you are enjoying the show and you want to reach out or connect with us, you can head over to our website, which is property-strategy.com. You can send us a message through the website or find our social media links if you want to connect with us on there. But yeah, reach out. We'd love to know what you're thinking about the show and any questions or suggestions that you may have for future episodes. This time next week, you'll be joined by myself and Dave, and we are talking about the dream of travelling around Europe in a motorhome. We hear that so many people have it on their bucket list of something they want to do at some point. So we thought we'd get really specific about how to do it, the lessons that we've had along the way, and what it's really like. So next week is all about moho life. So join us same time next week, and have a great week until then.